Welcome back to the Tori and Ren YouTube channel. Just like last week, I have a bit of an update before I get started with this week's project. So I just wanted to let you all know that for the next 2 weeks after this video is posted, I won't be sharing another video because I will be cat sitting for a family friend and I won't be home to record one. I will still be sewing while I'm there, so we'll have some projects lined up for when I get back, but no video will be posted. Another update is I saw the comments on my most recent video, so I will be posting a tutorial for the Ultra Mini Shell Bag, so that will be coming up once I get back to posting. So let's get started with today's project. So in today's video, we're going to be making one of these mini wallets. They have card slots on both sides with this really pretty rim that matches this exterior fabric. If we open up our center zipper, we actually have 2 pockets inside here, so one on this side and one on this side, so one for change and one for cash maybe. And this center fold, or the division, is actually, if we close our zipper up, the fold of the whole wallet. It's actually attached together with snaps, and we can actually use our wallet like this if we'd like. And then when you're ready, you can just align your snaps and snap it back together. So I have a couple different ones here, 2 here with this faux leather. This one has little strawberries on it. 2 here in faux suede, one with blue fabric and one with this brown tree fabric. And I also added some of my little labels on here. They're a little bit big for this, but I just got them and I wanted to use them and try them out. But I really like how they look with the labels. So if you'd like to make one of these, you can keep watching this video. I have the full instructions and measurements in it. Or if you're looking for the written instructions, you can check my Etsy shop, which is linked down below. Let's get started. So I just removed these from the frame, but I wanted to also show you how well these actually stand up. So as you can see here, because it's folded on the bottom, they actually stand up really well. And if they're full of cash and change and stuff, they actually get heavier, so they stand up even better. Moving on to materials. For print A, we're going to need 1 piece measuring 11 3/4 by 4.5. If you're using directional fabric, you're going to want the direction to run this way. Mine's not directional, but I will still give the instructions for directional fabric. Next up, I have an option for you. This is for the D-ring tab. So you can either cut the D-ring tab from print A, which is 100% quilting cotton, or print B, which is faux suede or faux leather, or even vinyl. I'm using faux leather. And the reason I'm giving an option is because this is all going to fold up and create a lot of layers. If your machine doesn't handle layers well, I don't recommend using the faux suede or faux leather. I instead recommend using quilting cotton. So if you're going with this option, you're going to cut a piece measuring 2 1/4 by 1.5. If you're going with this option, the print B one, you're going to cut a piece measuring 1 1/4 by 1.5. From print B, I'm also going to cut a piece measuring 4.5 by 11. As I said before, I'm using faux leather, but faux suede or vinyl will also work. If you decide to use 100% quilting cotton instead of this material, you may need to interface your piece because it will be a lot thinner on the bottom. Of print C, you're going to need pieces for your lining. Now for print C, I don't recommend directional fabric because the center piece is going to be that division, and if it folds, your print will end up upside down. So I recommend using something like a blendable or a multi. Mine's a blender, like a shimmer blender. I don't know if you can see the shimmer. But you're going to need 2 pieces measuring 4.5 by 3. I have 2 here. And you're going to need 1 piece measuring 6 by 4.5. It was rotated, I got confused. Of Fusible Fleece, you're going to need a piece measuring 11 3/4 by 4.5. I'm using Pellon 986F. It's a really thin fusible fleece. You don't want something too thick because otherwise your bag's going to end up really stiff in here and it's not going to have a nice fold. This is actually a thicker fusible fleece. I tried it out and it ends up a bit thicker than the other ones. And this here is a thinner one, so as you can see, it ends up a lot less bulky, but it's really up to you. You're also going to need a continuous number 3 nylon zipper measuring 4.5 inches. Mine's a metal look-alike zipper. And you're also going to need a pull for that zipper. We're just not going to add it in yet. We're going to add it in later. You'll need 1 1/2-inch D-ring. You'll also need 2 sets of open ring or halo snaps. Mine are 10mm snaps. Now I'm using silver snaps instead of antique finish snaps to match my D-ring and zipper because I don't have antique snaps and I don't have silver hardware to match the silver snaps. So that's why mine don't match, but you'll want all of the pieces to match. So the D-ring and the zipper, you may want them to match. For our first step, we're going to begin by fusing the wrong side of our print A piece, measuring 11 3/4 by 4.5, to the Fusible Fleece piece measuring the same size, so to the glue or bumpy side. So right on top, just like that. Once that's fused, we're going to split our print A piece in half by cutting the 11 3/4 inch side in half, so like this. Now that that's cut, I just want to give a heads up to anybody using directional fabric. You're going to want the bottom of your print here and here. So when you cut it, it would have been like this. You're going to flip one of the pieces. So the bottom of the design is here, and the top is here. That's because we're going to be sewing this side and this side to the suede, and this side to the zipper. So you want it up right here and here, since that's where you're going to see it most. Taking your print B piece and your two print A pieces, we're going to start assembling it. So as I said earlier, you want the bottom of your design here and here, and then we're going to place this on top with right sides facing. So we're going to align these 4.5 inch edges here and over here. The bottom will overlap of the print A. And then you're going to sew across here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the same thing on this side. Now that that's sewn, we're going to open it up like this. And then we're going to press our seams up. So this way up and this way up. And then on this side, it should be pressed like this and like this. We just don't want to put heat on that faux leather, faux suede, because it is plastic and it'll melt. So we don't want to do that. But then once it's pressed, we're going to fold this over using our seam allowance as a guide. We're going to fold it really tight to that seam allowance, just like this. And we're going to press it and put some quilting clips to hold that edge in place here and over here. So it might be a bit tricky. It's good to press it because it helps to hold it down, helps to hold the edge down. But just again, make sure not to press on this fabric. Now that the edges are pressed, they should look something like this. I just use some quilting clips to keep mine all the same thickness so it doesn't move while I sew. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do something called stitch in the ditch. We're going to sew right in that seam, right where the print A and print B meet. So all along this edge and all along this edge. This will keep this fold in place, and it'll look something like that. As you can see, you can just see that seam in there, but it keeps that edge nice and crisp. Once you've sewn both sides, they should look something like this on both ends. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install the snaps. With our joined piece, a ruler, and an erasable marking pen, I'm going to show you how to mark the locations for your snaps. I'm going to show you on this side, and then you're going to repeat over here. So from this outer edge, we're going to measure 3 1/4 in. So 3 1/4. We're then going to center our ruler with our markings so we can find the middle. So as you can see here, mine's right in the middle. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1/4 on this side and 1/4 on this side. So I know that right here is my middle. From that middle, I'm going to mark an inch out right here. I'm going to put a marking, and then an inch out and put a marking. These markings should also be 1 1/4 inch in from the outer edges. That's how you know they're in the right spot. Okay, and then you're going to repeat on this side. I already did mine. Taking your snaps, we're going to divide them amongst the two sides. So you're going to put 2 of the open ring pieces here. So 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. And they're going to put the protruding side on the same side. So protruding, protruding, and then the flat one here and here. So the flat side, the open ring side, is going to go through the back, only the print B piece, not the print A piece, and then the flat side's going to go on top. And the reason we divide it like this is we want to make sure we have the same snap on the same side. That way they will snap closed, because these two match and these two match. So I'm going to speed up the clip and try to push some of these through. That way I can show you how you're going to use your tool to close it. Or sorry, how to use your tool to install it. So I've just pushed through all of the flat sides of my snaps through all 4 markings. As you can see, all the prongs are poking through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to align the flat side on both of these ones. There we go. And there we go. You'll feel it when they align. And then the protruding side on these ones, my nails are a bit long, so it's hard to put them in the right spot. There and there. And then you're gonna get the tool that comes with your snap, and you're gonna align it on top, and you're gonna use either a rubber mallet or a hammer, and you're gonna hammer the snaps in till they're nice and secure. And to make sure they're secure, you can actually snap them together and make sure that they click and they snap together. Okay, so I'm gonna do that to all four. I can't do it on this table because it'll shake the camera too much and things might fall over. Before you add your snaps, something I quickly want to say that I failed to mention is that if your material isn't as thick as mine, you may want to put some interfacing, maybe some SF101, which is a cotton woven interfacing, in between your material and your snap. That's because when you open and close this over time, you may want your snap reinforced. So if your material isn't very thick, you may want to do that. Mine's already really thick, so that's why I'm not adding any. Now that the snaps are installed, they should look something like this on both sides. I've also just installed my little handmade tag here. And if you have a handmade tag that you want to place and you want to put it in a similar location, this is where it is when it's finished. You can put yours 1 inch in from the outer edge and 1/4 inch down from this joining seam. We're now going to work on our D-ring tab. So I'm going to give you separate instructions for the print A option and the print B option. So starting with the print A piece, measuring 2 1/4 by 1 1/2, we're going to flip to the wrong side. We're going to bring those 1 1/2 inch edges together, fold it in half with wrong sides facing, like so. We're going to press to crease that center fold. We're then going to open it up and bring the 1 1/2 inch edges into that center fold, just like that. And we're going to press to crease the outer folds. Then we're going to fold one more time so the raw edges are inside, just like so, and we're going to press to crease. We're then going to sew a top stitch close to the edge on both sides to secure the fold. For the print B version of the same piece, measuring 1 1/4 by 1 1/2, we're actually going to bring those 1 1/2 inch edges into the middle on the wrong side, like so. And you can either iron this to hold it down using a protective layer between the material and your iron, or you can use some basting tape, double-sided basting tape, to stick it down. What you're going to do is once it's folded in like that, you're just going to sew on both sides to secure. What I like to do when it's folded like this is I just sew a couple stitches right here and a couple stitches right here to hold it down like this. Then I try to press it a little bit. This material's a little stubborn, it doesn't like to press. But then I take it to my sewing machine and I sew both sides. Once your D-ring tabs are sewn, they should look something like this. And as you can see in blue here, I actually have those little stitches that I sewed to hold the folds in place when I sewed it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your D-ring and your chosen D-ring tab. You're going to insert it and just keep it folded, and we're going to set it aside. So for this next step, we're going to take our joined print A and B exterior piece and 2 of our lining pieces measuring 4 1/2 by 3, and also our zipper. We're going to split our zipper into 2 pieces, just like that, and we're going to align one with each print A piece, so the last 4 1/2 inch edge. So right here with the right side of the zipper facing the right side of the fabric, and the same thing, oops, it moved, and the same thing on this side, so like that. We're going to sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're going to sew on the side with the Fusible Fleece to prevent any stretching or moving. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our lining pieces and we're going to place them on top with the right sides facing like so. And like that on both sides. So aligning those 3 1/2 or 4 1/2 inch edges. And we're just going to sew across again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance in line with the seam we just sewed. So we're going to sew again on the Fusible Fleece side in line with that seam, that first seam. Now that both sides of the zipper tape are sewn, we're just going to open up our lining on both sides so the right side is now visible, and we're going to fold it to the back. And then we're just going to press our fabric away from the zipper here and then over here, and we're going to sew a top stitch on both sides of the zipper. Once your top stitch is done on both sides of the zipper, it'll look something like this. What we're going to do now is we're going to take an erasable marking pen and we're going to mark where this top fold is going to go, so this top edge. what you're going to do is you're going to lay your fabric out like this, and you're going to use your table, or you can use a measuring tape. What we're going to do is we're going to mark 4 inches up from here, which is also 1 inch down from this sewn edge of the fabric. So right here, you're going to repeat over here, and over here. Once the markings are complete, you're going to flip over to this side. You're going to move your lining out of the way, so up here, and then the same thing on this side. This piece is really long, so it's hard to keep it in frame. You're then going to take this nice edge and you're going to bring it up to those markings. So here and here, and then the same thing on this side, and everything should be folded underneath like so. And what you're going to do is you're just going to do a couple stitches here to hold it in place. Same thing here, so baste right there, and right there, and you can do this on the sewing machine. And then once we're done that, we'll add our D-ring tab. Now that those are basted in place, they'll look something like that. We're now going to take our D-ring tab with our D-ring in it, and we're going to attach it. You can honestly pick whichever side you'd like. I'm going to attach mine to this side opposite to my little tag. So I'm going to align both of the edges right here, right above the top rim of this pocket, so in line with it. And I'm just going to sew across here to secure. Now that the D-ring is attached and our lining is still loose, we're now going to add our remaining piece of the print C lining, measuring 4.5 by 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the right side of the fabric and we're going to align the 4.5 inch edges here. So right side's facing, just like that. This is the side with the D-ring. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then we're going to bring the remaining 4.5 inch side to this side, so the other 4.5 inch side, and we're going to sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but this time leaving a 3 inch opening because that will be used to turn the whole bag inside out later. Now that that's all attached, you should have a tube like this. We're going to turn to the right side. And now we're going to begin inserting our zipper pull. So something I want you to pay attention to when you're inserting your zipper pull is where the D-ring is. You want your zipper to open from that way, so like this, and then close toward it. Because if you have stuff in it and this is hanging, you don't want any tension being placed on the zipper and it opening and things falling out. So how I'm going to insert my zipper is if my tab is here, I'm going to put it in this way. So inserting it from here. So I'm actually going to flip to this side to make it a little bit easier for myself. And something I've noticed is I have these pulls from Emmeline bags, and something I found is they're very tricky to insert. I much prefer the Sally Tomato ones. So as you're inserting it, once the outer edges of your tape are perfectly aligned in there, you're just going to push a bit. Like I said earlier, these ones are a little bit tricky, but once it's in, just going to gently pull. And as you can see, the outer ends of my pull are aligned, and I'm just going to pull it right through because we want this side to be closed. So when we sew all the way around, we don't have to keep it, we don't have to manipulate it so it stays closed. So once that's closed, we're just going to reinsert the pull from the same side again. So once it's aligned again, we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to push it in a little bit more. And then I'm going to pull it, but this time not all the way through, just to the middle, like so. So your zipper should look something like that, nice and even here. So there's not more tape on one side than the other. It's perfectly balanced on both sides. Now that that's done, we're actually going to turn to the wrong side of everything. So not into the lining, but into everything. So in between the wrong side of the lining and the wrong side of the exterior, we're going to turn it out. So just like that. And we're going to straighten everything nice and flat. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find the middle of our print B piece, or the faux leather, by bringing these folds together, just like that. And we're going to cut a teensy little triangle notch from here. So I have my scissors now, and I'm going to align it over here so it's perfectly aligned. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut a tiny little triangle, very tiny, just like that, so it's visible. And then I'm going to do the same on this side and go like this. I'm going to get all these little pieces off the table. Then what we're going to do is we're not going to sew the lining in this step, so we're going to try to keep it away. what we're going to do is on this side, on the print B side, we're going to align it perfectly, that center marking with our zipper. And because we cut that triangle, we can actually see exactly where the zipper hits, right in the middle here. We're just going to sew a couple stitches to hold it there. And the same thing on this side. This will keep the zipper closed and prevent it from opening. Now that that's centered, we're going to flip over to the lining side. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this side with our opening and we're going to sew from here all the way until just before the zipper. We're going to do it on this side and on this side. Then we're going to move the lining out of the way and we're going to repeat the same thing. We're going to sew from here just before the zipper and from here just before the zipper, making sure to backstitch on those corners for here as well as here a backstitch. Okay, and we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for both. Once those separate pieces are sewn, it's going to look something like that. We're now going to move on and finish sewing the rest of this closed. But before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the lining back here. So if you remember, the first pieces we attached to our zipper measured 3 inches. So 3 inches on this side and 3 inches on the other side. And together that measures 6 inches. So it should match our outer lining piece perfectly. However, you're probably thinking when we sew our zipper, don't we lose a 1/4 inch? You do, but you also gain half of the zipper tape, which typically measures about a 1/4 inch for number 3 zippers. But depending on the width of your zipper, that may change and it may throw off how well these two pieces match together. So depending on your seam allowance, maybe the zipper tape itself, it may not be completely flat. So if yours isn't completely flat back here, what you can do is you can take apart this seam here, lay it flat, so readjust your fabrics. You may have to trim one of them a little bit shorter, depending on how they align, and then you can re-sew this using your 1/4 inch seam allowance. This will make sure that when we sew across, nothing is bigger and you don't have any puckers in here because you have extra fabric. You want it to lay nice and flat. So once you've adjusted that, if yours needs adjusting, yours may align perfectly as it is. You're going to flip over to the print B side and you're going to sew here, so close. So this side close, catching all of these layers nice and flat. And you're going to get to this seam and you're just going to pass the seam, so go on top of it for a little bit and then backstitch on top. This will make sure that there's no holes left behind in here. You're going to do the same thing on this side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and just going on top of this slightly and backstitching. Make sure to also backstitch up here and up here because those are our corners. Oh, and one more thing, you want to backstitch on top of that D-ring tab. Once you've sewn the sides closed, it should look something like this. As you can see, my seams all meet each other over here and over here. And once you're done sewing that closed, you're going to trim all of your strings, maybe give it a good lint roll, and then you're going to use the opening here in the lining to turn it inside out. And what you're going to find is your zipper is closed right now. So what you can do, I don't know if you can see that on camera, as you can see here, I'm just going to push my finger, push that back, push the pull back a little bit. And then I can just open the rest up. So it's nice and open. Now I can turn the whole thing inside out. So as you're turning it inside out, if you notice, this one came out just fine, but then this one's flipped to the wrong side. If that happens, just turn it that way and it'll flip just fine. And then you're going to get a knitting needle or a corner point turner, and you're going to put it inside your opening and you can push out these corners. I'm going to go grab mine. So from inside that opening, you can just go glide it along that edge and then push those corners out and they should be nice and perfect. Now this is why a lot of the time in a lot of the bags and the projects I make, I do a folded edge on the bottom here. That's so I can get these really nice corners, because with suede and thick materials, it's really hard to get corners like this when you have a seam on the bottom too. So I always try to do some sort of folded edge to get that really nice corner. So now that all the corners are pushed out and nice and sharp, we're going to take our lining out from our interior. So as you can see, because we didn't sew this side into here, we now have a loose lining on one side so we can actually do our opening. So the opening is quite big this time, so you're going to have to do a little bit of manipulating, but you're going to try to get the edges nice and flush. You're going to tuck the raw edges inside like so. You're going to give it a good press at the iron, and then you're going to sew across using your sewing machine close to the edge to catch that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Because this was kind of tight to pull out, ours did fray a little bit, so I'm going to go nice and close to the edge to make sure I catch all of those raw edges. If you're sewing it by hand, that's no problem. You can just do the same thing, just sew it by hand. So right in here, you can sew it by hand across. But it'll look like that, and then you can tuck it back inside. You can give your bag a good press at the iron, so right here and right here. Once it's pressed, it'll look something like this. And then what you can do is you can snap your snaps closed. So one there and one there. And if you'll notice here, it has a really pretty weird bend. What you're going to do is you're going to pull it like this and press it like that, and it'll fix that bend. This side's a little bit trickier because of the D-ring, but it should also flatten up nicely if you used a thinner interfacing. So just like that. And I've just added some stuff in here to show you. So I have cash on this side and I have some change on this side. So once it's filled with stuff, you can just close up the zipper. And as you can see, it maintains its shape really well. So these are all the different sides, so you can see what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this sewing tutorial for this mini wallet. It is a different concept, but I think it's really fun to make. So I hope you enjoy making one too. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm going to be away for about 2 weeks. So I'll see you when I'm back with a new project. And that's all for today. So I'll see you next time.